Welcome, everybody. We are at the 6 core values of arts and missions in the 21st centuries. And this is in 2 parts. So we're covering part 1, and then we'll have a 10-minute break in the second part. And we have Robin Harris and James Krabill, who will be leading us. And if we're going to allow Robin and James to introduce themselves because we won't take too much time for that. I just wanted to give you a note as a reminder. Type in your questions in the chat box as you think of them, and then we will begin later with those. I'll hand it over to you, Robin.
Hello, I'm Robin Harris. I'll just tell you briefly that I serve as the president of the Global Ethnodoxology Network. James Krabill, who is presenting with me, is the chairman of the board of that network. He will introduce himself in just a minute. I serve at Dallas International University as the program chair for the program in world arts. So we have world arts degrees at master's and PhD level. James, you want to introduce yourself?
James Krabill. Spent about half of my adult life in West Africa working with African initiated churches as a Bible and church history teacher, and got involved in the local hymn creation of the local church in a church that actually wrote all of their own music. So it was a pretty unique place of ministry. And that's how I got started in all this and got thrown into relationships with a lot of other crazy, wonderful people.
I got thrown into it by being working on the field and just realizing that this is really important. My husband and I served in Siberia, and when we were there working with churches, we were like, wow, this is the key. We need to learn how to do this. So that's how I got into ethnodoxology. All right, so 6 core values for arts and mission in the 21st century. You'll notice that there's a little tiny URL there, tinyurl.com/6 core values. If you could actually, if you want access to the document that we're discussing, you can find it at that link, tinyurl.com/6 core values with C and V capitalized. All right, so last year, the leadership of the Global Ethnodoxology Network, or GEN, decided it was time for us to begin discussions on some core values that we've seen develop in the movement, or some people call it a discipline of ethnodoxology. This session is the result of those discussions. We hope to incorporate feedback on this draft into a final version that would be published in 2021 by GEN. So you can go to that draft and see that at tinyurl.com/6 core values. But first, you probably want to know a little bit of background about the movement of ethnodoxology and how this network intersects with it. Here is that background. In 2003, the International Council of Ethnodoxologists was formed to provide connections using the internet and email technology to solve the problem of isolation. And I was really feeling the isolation in Siberia. So connections, certification to provide motivation for growth and a path toward credibility. This was a new field and people were very suspicious of it, so we needed credibility. The third thing was we wanted ICE to be a clearinghouse for information about the use of ethnodoxology principles in mission. In other words, to spread the idea of best practices. And so the website became the clearinghouse. One of the first mission statements of this organization, which at the time was called International Council of Ethnodoxologists, was this: the ICE network exists to encourage and equip, there you have it, encourage and equip Christ followers in every culture to express their faith through their own heart music and other arts. So at the beginning, most members were ethnomusicologists, but that quickly began to change, and eventually the music-focused logo gave way to this, a more arts-neutral logo. I mentioned this last session during the lunchtime networking time, but I love this picture because it represents in so many ways the typical GEN membership. All of these people have grad degrees in the field. Justin is a cross-cultural worker from the US, now serving in Southeast Asia. He's a leader in networking and mentoring. Joy is a Korean American Gen board member. She serves in a multicultural refugee population near Atlanta, Georgia. And she is the convener for Saturday morning's 2-session panel on Does Ethnodoxology Have an Urban Future? She's also a plenary speaker for next year's EMS. So come back next year to hear Joy speak. Eber is a Brazilian ethnodoxology leader. He's on the right. He's also the executive director of SIL's Aleng Training Center in Brasilia. He teaches ethnodoxology workshop at various places around Brazil and other countries. So we started in 2003 with 60 charter members. By 2006, we had more than doubled to 150 people from and in 50 countries. In 2011, it was 220. Now in 2020, we're about 350 people and in and from way more than 80 countries. Approximately 1/3 of Gen members have an international scholar status. It really helps to just show how international we are. And we have a free newsletter, and about 590 people have subscribed to that newsletter. So we have more people reading the newsletter than actually sign up for membership and enjoy networking with everyone. So these 3 leaders gathered in 2016 at the Lausanne Younger Leaders Gathering, and I just love their faces. So we have some publications. Worship and Mission for the Global Church, an Ethnodoxology handbook is on the left. It's used as a textbook for a number of courses around the country and is already in its 2nd printing. It was collaboratively created by over 100 Gen members in 20 countries and edited by 4 board members. So we're pretty excited about that. The 2nd volume off to the right is a companion volume called Creating Local Arts Together, a manual to help communities reach their kingdom goals. It was written by Brian Schrag and is also used as a textbook and field manual for doing ethnodoxology in communities. The Mission Frontiers issue on ethnodoxology was condensed from the handbook, and you can download that for free at the Gen site under the Learn More button. So we also have a peer-reviewed journal called the Global Forum on Arts and Christian Faith. You can see the URL there. In fact, you can just go right through to the URL right now and sign up to receive updates whenever we have new articles that come on. The Global Forum features a range of articles, working papers, and reviews on topics related to the expressive arts and Christianity. Right now, the journal has 310 subscribers, hopefully more after today, and with the most viewed article being accessed over 2,000 times. So registration is free. The arts are the arts articles are always free as well. And then you see on the right-hand side, there's 2 editions of the Orality Journal, Arts and Orality Part 1 and 2. Our Gen board members Katie Frost and James Krabill produced those volumes of the Orality Journal. You can also find those at the Learn More button at the homepage of the Gen site. So here are a few agencies with ethnodoxologists. There are actually more and more agencies every year that use ethnodoxologists, and we're very, very excited about that. We're hoping that that number will grow. Jen has developed 2 intensive courses. You can work with Jen to bring these courses to your school or to your organization. This course, Introduction to Ethnodoxology, focuses mostly on people who plan to stay in the United States and be involved in church-based or missional work in communities here. The 2nd course, Arts for a Better Future, focuses specifically on methodologies for cross-cultural work. So if you really, want to know what do I do next? What do I do first? All of those questions. It's also for artists and non-artists alike. Workshop, credit options. You go to artsforabetterfuture.org. That's that link at the bottom, and you can find out everything you want to know about that. We've taught Arts for a Better Future to over 850 people around the world from about 70 countries and growing. So we're pretty excited about that. And the other cool thing is, we started out as ICE. That was a real problem, actually, especially in the last couple years. And so when we consulted with our international membership, the result generated a new name, not just ICE, but the Global Ethnodoxology Network. And so that is how we come to the need for value statements. The network is now 17 years old, and definitions and approaches to ethnodoxology have proliferated. We feel like there's a need to capture the values emerging across the global network and to invite reflection on how we can contextualize those values for diverse settings. So this statement we're presenting to you today was written by Brian Schrag out of the Gen board discussions. And James and I had a little bit of input on it, but we consider this version an initial statement. We'll bring it to the board soon. We would love for you to be able to have input during the Q&A on what you think of this statement. And James, I'm just going to let you take it away. You can start in with the core values.
Okay. Can you put all 6 of them up there?
Absolutely.
There we go. So in the course of the rest of this session and the next one, we're going to just take a really quick look at all 6 of these. The titles are Christian worship, academic rigor, historical awareness, human agency, locally grounded methods, and confident hope. And in each case, there's a short little summary definition, but in each case, we also have a longer definition, which we'll share one by one. In this session, we're going to do 3, the first 3, and the next session we'll do the last 3. And in both cases, open it up for discussion and feedback. So Christian worship, one of our key values. Jen celebrates the stunning variety of Christian worship patterns in the global church. Christian worship, though sound theology undergirds each of the values summarized in this document, ethnodoxology's central focus is worship. I guess you have to. Worship is the act of adoring and praising God, ascribing worth to Father, Son, Spirit as the one who deserves homage and service. Let me just say one quick thing about this. Worship is not the only theological category that we think is important, and we are working at sort of another document that looks at the biblical theological foundations more broadly, but we do focus a lot on worship, and we want to highlight that in these values. So we have a couple of statements about Christian worship yet. The most frequent Greek New Testament word for worship is proskuneo, which stems from pros, toward, and kuneo, to kiss. Examples include the Magi's response to Jesus as a child from Matthew 2:2, and the effect of God's words in church gatherings, 1 Corinthians 14:25. In addition to moments of adoration, worship also refers to a lifestyle of being in love with God, in awe of Him, and in His service at all times and in all places, from Romans 12:1-2. The global church exhibits a stunning variety of worship patterns that we hope to see enriched even more. So basically what you see in 3 frames here is a very broad definition of worship that goes from the personal and corporate body in worship in often different settings around the world, but extended to Romans 12, which is a whole life of service, sacrificial service, and giving of our lives to God in worship. That's the broad definition of how we define worship, and it actually explains some of the other categories that we'll develop here.
The next category that was important to talk about in our values was academic rigor. So the statement is, Jen carefully integrates insights and methods from the many disciplines that contribute to accomplishing its goals. So first of all, we value and develop resources that provide holistic views and positions from the variety of disciplines that inform our vision and mission. And I already mentioned some of the publications produced collaboratively by the GEN community, but individuals are also producing books and articles that are advancing the theory and methodology underpinning the practice of ethnodoxology. So we have authors like Beliski, Myers, Moon, King, Schrag and Rowe, King again, Neely, Fortunato, and Brenneman, Kidula, my own book, as well as the King, Kidula, and Krabill's book. Oh, I see. Yeah, we've got Krabill's book there. And King again, Brian Schrag's book with Katie Van Buren, and then King, Krabill, and Oduro. These are many of the books that have been produced in the last couple of years. And we are hoping to develop more and more resources that inform the study of ethnodoxology. So these are the disciplines that we draw from, like performance studies, folkloristics, creativity studies, anthropology of performing arts, music and visual arts, ethnochoreology, ethnopoetics, long-standing Euro-American arts categories of things like theater and dance, choreography, musicology, and visual arts, also orality and worship studies. Other realms of theology have all contributed to this multidisciplinary discipline of ethnodoxology. Also, in regards to academic rigor, in our research, writing, and practice, we endeavor to maintain high academic standards as well as performances and products that best emulate the creative and representative attributes of the works generated by individuals and communities. So there's a focus on, these local works. And I love this picture of Cameroonian Roche Ntanke, who is an ethnodoxology leader in Africa. Brian Schrag mentored Roche and was on his dissertation committee along with James Krabill. James was able to travel to Cameroon for the defense. So leaders like Roche from the Global South are really the future of ethnodoxology, and we feel the increasing number of scholarly works and practical applications coming from these leaders is very, very exciting. We also anticipate that these efforts of developing all of these resources will in turn enhance the qualities of the various disciplines that inform our work. So the Schrag and Van Buren publication that came out of ethnodoxology praxis is now being published by Oxford University Press with a little bit of civic language in it. Also, ethnodoxologists are not all professional academics, but we believe that they should plan and act informed by rigorous, nuanced, analytical ideas. Right before this conference, I did put out a survey to all of our membership, asked them to write in and say where they're from, where they're serving, and what degrees did they have. And so this is just interesting information on the degrees, but you can see we have a lot of people with doctorates, 41%, 46% of those 100 people that responded had master's degrees. So I think that's interesting. And while the vast majority of GEM members have advanced degrees, ethnodoxology practitioners are making us keep our feet on the ground, so to speak, by making sure that theory and praxis are always tied together. So I thought that you would find that interesting. Over to you, James, for historical awareness.
What we are doing does not fall out of the sky or take place in a vacuum. We want to be historically aware of the history of encounter between many times Western Christian missionaries and cultures around the world. And so we are clearly in dialogue with that whole story, and we situate our thoughts and goals and activities in reference to the global, regional, and local histories and sociocultural dynamics that exist. So historical awareness, there are a couple slides here that capture a little bit our interests. We recognize the complex and constantly changing nature of every individual's and community's artistic and worship practices, including our own. Another slide coming here eventually. Because Euro-American art forms have largely accompanied the spread of Christianity in recent centuries. Local artistic traditions, especially those of ethno-linguistic minorities, often remain outside the church. And I would say a lot of us sort of cut our ethno-doxological eye teeth in contexts that are described here in village settings, in ethnic groups around the world, where we became aware of the richness of the traditions in a particular location. And that's what's really fascinated us with this conversation. However, in the next slide, since ethnodoxology grew out of experiences of people motivated by Scripture to redress this balance of an overemphasis on Euro-American perspectives, Jen retains a robust engagement with representatives of local, older, often rural artistic histories. And more currently, as we look at the last slide, we also, however, celebrate the frequently urban, multicultural, multi-artistic identities and creativity that mark more and more Christian communities, developing resources to help them craft unique multicultural worship practices. We're moving in that direction, but we also have a lot to learn, and some of you in this conversation are very much involved in that and can help. So these are the 6 total core values that guide Jen. We've looked at Christian worship, academic rigor, historical awareness, and if you go on to the next slide, we are curious to see whether you have questions about what you've heard so far, either about Jen or about the 3 values that we've already described. Other questions might be, as we think of the past and future of mission, which is the theme of this conference, what role do you think the arts should play in the future of mission? And what personal experiences have you had with arts and mission that tie to the values we've discussed here? The 3 that we've looked at: Christian worship, academic rigor, and historical awareness.